Thomas and Michael bring many years of hands-on experience in leading organizations in the complex environments. Their deep understanding of leadership is appreciated by many customers they have at CRISP. Among those customers are organizations with the world's best engineering cultures. They also stand among few global experts who could deliver leadership courses certified by Scrum Alliance. They work with amazing people who became legends in the modern landscape of leadership. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with them as much as I did. And if you did, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the like button. It helps the channel to develop. Thank you so much. So, hi everybody, welcome to another episode of our podcast. And today we have two special guests, Thomas and Michael.
Hi, thanks.
There.
Nice to have you here, guys. Finally.
Yeah, nice to be here.
And the topic for today's podcast is Agile leadership.
Well, yeah, one of our favorite topics.
Yes, so I must mention that recently me at my company, the management group, have received an excellent training from two of you. Everyone was super happy, and I would highly recommend the training to everyone. If someone wants to get that, where should they go?
I think the best way is to go for the CRISP website. So it's crisp.se, and then find a way there. If you want to have it in English, it could unfortunately be some problems right now because the site is in Swedish, but we can do internal classes in English as well.
And we received it in English, which was very, very good.
Oh, that's happy to hear.
Cool. So what is Agile leadership then?
An interesting question. Actually, I would say Agile leadership is not really defined, but the best definition I can come up with, at least, is the leadership that is needed to help your organization to handle complexity.
Yeah, so I think it shouldn't be called Agile leadership. It should be called leading in Agile context, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there is no such kind of research or defined term. There are, I don't remember now, but I heard somewhere there was like, someone had researched was like 50 or something like this types of leaderships. Yeah, but the more accurate is kind of how to lead in an agile or complex context.
So here, the agile means that actually things are changing around and you need a special type of leadership to manage that.
I would say it's moving around. Things are happening that you didn't foresee, and yeah. Sometimes this is referred to as the VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And more companies are facing that world, and things are happening that they didn't handle like 10 or 20 years ago.
So one of the characteristics that you have to have in that world, if I remember from your training as well, is that the circumstances are changing and it's very hard to plan. So the way how you go forward is you basically do the planning as much as possible, but you rely on your attempts and tries and the feedback you get from that, and then you make the next small step and adjust.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of two parts. One is that you need to be ready. So when the opportunity comes, then you should be ready to jump on. But the other one is that you need to experiment. You create the customer need in some way, and then you experiment and see what is working well, what is not working well. So you take small steps and you learn from those. So learning is very important here as well in the agile environment.
But so when you talk about agile leadership, it could also be kind of referring to your own skills, that you need agility in yourself as you're leading in this more changing environment. So agility meaning that taking multiple perspectives, stepping back, maybe then zooming in, listening to others, getting others' views.
Yeah, because one important thing with complexity is that there is no such thing as the expert has the answer. So you need to rely on the many people instead, the crowd intelligence, and that is something for your leadership style. How do you involve people and really involve them in a way of solving the problems, not just giving you the answer that they think that you want. I think that is one of the big challenges with the leadership within Agile environment.
The reason why you want to involve the crowd is because the problem you're dealing with is probably a complex thing. And there are different people who have different perspectives. So when you combine them, then you get the best outcome.
Yeah, exactly.
And the solutions are, you could say, context specific. So if you have a solution from another domain or another context, it probably won't work in your context. So you need the people who have the context of where you are working. So because you cannot just copy any good practice or best practice. So then is really important to get understand the context right. Then you need multiple perspectives.
Context is the key. I even like on the interviews, you usually talk to people, and I think good candidates that you talk to, if you're interviewing an agile coach or Scrum Master, they will ask a lot of questions about the context, about your question.
Yeah.
Because the solutions which involve people, they are quite tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. It's usually when people are involved, then you're in the having complex problems. I mean, you have trends, you have everything that is just making things change. People's behavior are changing because of a lot of things. And as a company with this hyper competitiveness, sorry, hard word for non-English to say. I mean, you have to just be there at the right time and have the right solutions for the people that your customers.
Yeah, so the more changing environment or unpredictable, the less can cause an effect. The more agile kind of approaches you need in general, but also in leadership. And in traditional settings, you might have had more ability to plan and have things more predictable. So in those contexts, it's fine to do more waterfall or plan up front and then just check and so on. So it's when things are changing really rapidly, or there is different hypotheses, we don't know exactly the solution. So that's basically when you need agile leadership.
Oh, indeed, this is very cool. And I have a small kind of theory. It might be total bullshit. I'm sorry, guys. But when I look at when I read, I haven't been witnessing those events myself, but when I look at the way how we got here is like, and I'm going to take an example of the industrial maybe company or a set of industrial companies. When you're producing something, when you're manufacturing something, you would probably have already conveyor belts in the industry going and technology up and running when you're for what you're trying to produce. And at that line, you would have people who would work as regular employees, and they would learn the process, and they would spend a lot of time to tweak it and make it really perfect, right? That's how Toyota, I think, works. That's how all major manufacturers in the automotive industry work. So you really want to get employees know how things are working from the inside, and when people do something, when the people do something really good, you promote them. And that's how from an employee you become maybe a team lead, right? Being responsible for a small group on the assembly line for like 4, 5, 6, whatever people. And then if you do that job really well, if your group stands out, then you're going to be promoted to share your knowledge with a wider amount of people, with a wider group, right? So this process promotes the best to the top.
Yeah.
And that's how you get a leader that all the employees that you work with, they would know that you're an expert because you've grown from the same environment where they are. If they have a problem, they will very naturally ask you for help because you've been there, you know it, and that's a very healthy relationship, I think. And at some point of time, if we look at Dan Pink, right, what he says, it's the essence of work has changed. We have the world which has a massive amount of creative tasks, which are non-linear anymore, which are non-programmable, so to say, as you do with the conveyor belt. And what happens there? We still have the culture uh, that produces the traditional kind of managers that would originate from this industrial environment. And we have totally new stream, which produces engineers who are highly skilled employees in creating and solving creative tasks. And at the same time, we have the culture that produces managers who are supposed to be the experts. But to become expert in this field is very hard. So what you get is you get the experts who grow, develop their expertise, and then you have managers who do not have that knowledge, who are not experts anymore in the field. And I think that's where we get this gap. And the way how community addressed that is that, well, they thought, what can we do? We can't tell people how to do their job because we don't know. So we will try to do our best to support them in creating solutions in the areas. And that's why I think the concepts like servant leadership emerged. And that's why the servant leadership is such so big movement at the moment. Because so many people really feel that the best thing that they can do is to support the others.
Yeah, it's interesting when we turning everything upside down, because the question is, if the manager is not supposed to have the answer because we don't believe in the expert anymore, then the question is, what should the leader do? And I think that is of interest for everyone to just ask the question: what if I'm a leader? What is it actually that I can contribute with that is good for the organization?
Yeah, so there, I mean, there's different a couple of different things I would like to build up on what you said there. I mean, yeah, the traditional way is kind of you promoting experts, and often they can become managers. So there's a good thing about that, because you know the context very well. And a pitfall is that if you take someone with an MBA or management school, a total different context, you put them in another company, and that context is totally different, and you try to then apply a more of a traditional management training on that new context, and that will probably not work. So having kind of expert managers is not so good. So you need to basically grow them, and they need to be familiar with the context. But a pitfall is that when you grow them kind of in their context, often who gets promoted is people with more of kind of more of controlling or driving or result-oriented style.
Or presentational skills.
Yeah. So there was some research that if you are driving things, you probably get results and take control and make things happen. So often you get promoted, but after a certain kind of level, that doesn't work, because you are in the front kind of driving things, and now things getting so complex that you don't have all the answers. Then you need to shift more towards this servant leadership, creating the environment for the organization instead, creating the space where more people can lead. So even taking a manager just from a training management school wouldn't work, and just developing this achiever or driving style, controlling style it doesn't really work either. So, but I think you need to have more, like you mentioned the Toyota, or have the manager more like a gardener, someone who know the context, but know it's complex, and can create environment for the right things to emerge.
Yeah, so if you're sitting with the understanding of the context and a more holistic view, your role as a leader is more to help others to understand that view. And I think this is one of the paradox, because that is some sort of advantage to have that understanding. And instead of using that understanding to help yourself come a little bit higher up and get better paid, you need to use that understanding to teach others and help them get the same understanding.
Oh, that's such a big thing that you mentioned. Like, yeah, we are, how do you call it? We are the the tribal species, right?
Mm.
And in the tribe, actually the ego plays a big role,
Yeah.
and we are very often ego driven. And the thing you mentioned, that people, they decided maybe they get promoted and earn a bit more, versus those who are really acting as servants and creating that environment where many could could be better and could deliver better results. But
Yeah, it's much easier to promote a hero, someone who made something really good, that really solved the company in that situation. But the problem is, very often the hero is the reason why we had a problem from the beginning. So, I think that is a paradox here.
There is this kind of paradigm shift when you talk about hero. So a hero kind of are standing in the front and pulling everyone with them, so kind of leading others to follow them. But yeah, there's this limitation to that. So we talk about kind of a shift that is going from hero to host.
mhm.
So being a host is creating the circumstances, the environment, the space for good things to emerge, things that you want for them to emerge. Yeah, like you're the host for hosting us for this podcast today. So you created the space and the and the thing. So you are leading in that perspective, creating this.
I love to talk to people who are smart. Then I can learn something, and that's the purpose of this podcast, to share that great wisdom and knowledge.
And
But
I think that is also something very important for a leader, to have that idea that I want to learn. Because a lot of the problems we are seeing is because leaders are thinking that they are the experts, they already know. And that means if they find something that they don't understand, which is very common in the complex world, they will react in a way just to protect their own ego, saying that, oh, I'm the expert here, I'm the one who should know, and suddenly they don't know, and this could give very strange consequences how they are acting.
I think what the organizations are quite not there yet is about how to identify these kind of two types of guys, like the the heroes versus the hosts. I think companies, and it's very naturally easy to spot a person who is like, follow me, let's do it, who does that. And it's very hard to identify the person who stands behind all the activities, and who is like, as you say, creates this environment where people are doing good job, they're happy, they're delivering great product, they're really caring for the company needs. You know, it's you can see, you cannot see that directly. There should be some way to detect that. Do you have any ideas how, like, any advices on how to do that?
But often what you do is you do a lot of kind of legwork in the corridors, going around, talking to people, connecting people. So it's a lot about connecting, creating informal networks. Oh, you have that idea, go, oh, maybe have you talked with them and so on. And you start to kind of make these connections, and then because you cannot really plan and formalize everything either. So creating those connections, so often people like going around talking, connecting, and yeah, are the kind of yeah, we talk about this catalyst or something like the oil in the machine, right? So making things happen, but you cannot really see it.
How would the company identify such a person, and how they would, like, give him a boost?
I think you need to be very good at seeing this, because I agree with you, Dennis, that this is a hard thing actually, because people are usually looking for the heroes, the charismatic leaders, and so on. But what we should start looking for is those the catalysts, the one that is not really seen but make things happen and make people happy, make sure to connect people, and so on. So much harder to spot. So maybe we should have a class just about that, I guess.
Yeah.
This could be awesome, because indeed, traditional management approach, I mean, I had talked to many people who are really successful managers, and they were all about financial goals, financial achievements, and, like, everything else would be secondary. Of course, for the company, it's important, But also there are guys like Ricardo Semler who built their companies on the kind of totally opposite way. He would care for his employees, and he would assume that the employees would care for the company. He would have people who would define their own salaries, their working schedules. He would think about those kind of concepts while walking through the graveyard and thinking, what am I going to leave after myself? A lot of wealth and a lot of unhappy people, or like a huge legacy of happy people who know how to do good things for the bigger purpose. But that's a totally new way of thinking, I think. It's not very common yet.
I love the story behind the servant leadership. So servant leadership comes from the book by Robert Greenleaf. I think it's from the 70s. And he was inspired by this essay about a group that went on this expedition out in the wilderness. And with them, they had this boy or sidekick that kind of, they thought that person just organized the tents and the food and made them tea and things like that. But one day that the boy was gone, and suddenly everything kind of fell into pieces. It was a crisis. Everything got into the kind of disarray, and then they had to abandon the expedition and just get back to the civilization. And of course, it wasn't just a tea boy. It was the person that actually had kind of organized or made everything work for them, but they didn't realize it until it was gone. And a bit the sad story is that I see this in organizations quite a lot, that there is cost cutting. So you look at all the formal role descriptions. We should have 10 project managers, 15 line managers, 20 engineers, for example. And they say, what are you doing? You're just going around in the corridors and talking to people. And we don't even have the role descriptions, so you should go out. I've seen it a couple of times that they laid off the best people, that's the ones that made everything work, kind of behind the scenes.
Glue.
Yeah. Yes.
It's so much easier to see that person who makes things happen when they are really dealing with it. But the hard is the ones that create the environment that makes other people do something good.
You often don't see it until they're gone. Then you kind of notice, why isn't it working anymore?
Yeah.
It's also about the mindset. The guy Simon Sinek. Basically, I'm making parallels here. If you create the environment where you show how things are done in a good way by being part of that environment and helping people to see their way, being a coach rather than a doer, then this will last much longer than when you will do everything yourself.
Yeah.
Similar concept in martial arts. There are martial arts where you learn some sort of movement and it's totally artificial, it's not natural, and after a couple of years you'll forget it. But there are martial arts which use very natural moves, and then it's with you forever. As long as you can move your body, then you'll know how to use it.
Can you use it for leadership as well?
I don't know. I think martial arts and leadership, they are in some sort similar. They have a lot of similarities.
Yeah. Tell us.
Yeah,
you want to learn as well on this one, right?
No, that's also very different. I mean, if you look at for example, Aikido, which uses the energy of someone else instead of your own, and there is a similar system called Sistema. It comes from Russia, which was designed for like the injured person to survive or withstand someone who's strong and healthy and armed. So the only thing you could do there is like basically use his own energy and his own power against him, and kind of survive this kind of clash. It's more like, I don't know what's the exact analogy with leadership. It's very hard to kind of come from it. But the idea is that you don't push, you don't press, you don't like hit something. You help it all develop naturally in the right direction.
I think that this is really key in leading change, because if you're not really listening in, you're fluent with the system, you're sensing what's working and not, and then you can go in and or maybe sometimes you have to just go with the energy, etc. So otherwise we might just kind of push and get more resistant. So those are really good metaphors actually for leading change.
Yeah, I like this idea of dancing with the system in an organization. So instead of just trying to stop everything, you are dancing with it and help it move in the right direction.
What I thought is these concepts should also be applicable for different stages of organizational development in different organizations. Because if, for example, I would think about small startup, where you have very limited amount of people, very limited resources, you don't have time to wait. You have to make things happen. While in the large organization, you actually condense a bit. And, like when I started in my current company, I was very frustrated because of I moved from Denmark, where environment is, I think, a bit more faster, at least in the company I was working for. In here, for me, it was like, why things are taking so long? And then actually I learned that, it's because people want to do things in the right way. And yes, it takes time, but through the time which you lose, you gain commitment and you gain engagement, and you achieve better quality, which is so important.
Yeah, it's easier when you're in a small company, you're closer to each other. So it's more natural to share information. And sometimes you sit in so close that you just can't avoid sharing information. But at the same time, I think sometimes I get the question, when is Agile not the right thing to do? And one of the answers, or maybe the best answer I have there, is if you are having something completely new that will totally change the world, like a lot of the things Apple have done, kind of you have to just be forcing and saying, okay, I'm paying you money to just create this. I don't want your mind of it because this is a new idea. But I mean, most of us are working with something else where it's more important to be just following what the customers are saying, right?
Or it could be on the other end of the spectrum, where you have something that is very commoditized or clear. It's obvious what to do. You just kind of need to execute it.
Yeah.
Should we have a couple of words about what servant leadership is not? Because I think there's still a lot of misconceptions, and people kind of perceive this differently. Someone says, well, for me, servant leadership is when I gather everyone in the room and tell them what to do, and I'm the leader of their servants. Servant leadership.
Yeah, so I was at the customer, and then servant leadership is quite popular in Agile community and known. And then but this company said, no, don't mention servant leadership. Here we drive things. We're not just kind of weak or soft. So one misunderstanding is that it's very soft or something like this. But servant leadership is basically, I mean, you can think of it, if you have a traditional pyramid or hierarchical organization, instead of standing at the top and driving things and kind of pulling everyone with you, like if you shift the pyramid, it's basically upside down. And then you have the people that are closest to the value creation. They are in service of the customer or the user. So the people that are on the floor, so to say, they are the ones serving users and customers, and everyone else in the organization is basically serving those people that are in direct contact with the customers. So there's a kind of servant, you're serving customers, you're serving the employee, and you're doing everything of this in the service of the purpose of the organization. There is also this, we are here for a reason, so you're in service of that kind of. So it's really powerful, but it's like an outward mindset. You're looking outward. It's not, we talked about it in the beginning, it's not this ego driven, I think you should do this because it's good for our customers or service or for me. But no, you want to kind of really focus out first.
And I think it's really important about if you want to create engagement. It's much easier to make people do the things they should do if they have kind of found out themselves, instead of you telling them you should do this. But if you create an environment where it's obvious that they should do exactly the same thing, and they figure it out, like, oh wow, now it's obvious that I should do this, then they do the same thing, but with engagement, not just because you told them so. And I think
Or
that is a
probably
benefit.
they do even better or the right thing. You might assume that you also know what's best for others. But if you're all in service of the purpose, kind of the reason for the organization, then everybody can contribute to that.
It's really powerful. And then the question is, like, in this environment, in such environment, we all want, I guess, everyone should be kind of a leader, right? Everyone should feel that he's responsible for something, and that responsibility comes from within him. It's like kind of internal motivation for that person. That's,
But
I
it's
think,
also, you're mentioning something very important here, this idea of everyone being a leader. And then the question is, what is a leader? And I think the best answer to that is it's someone who takes responsibility for the organization and makes decisions based on what is best for the organization, not best for themselves. And that is the kind of people we want to have on all levels.
can this be done by like teams? What I'm asking is because I think now we're in the days where most of the products are created by either like one or several smaller teams. That's what organizations are trying to achieve, because at some point they realize that small groups of people who are tightly connected, who are united with a single goal, and who help each other kind of daily, they are much more efficient or effective than just a bunch of resources, right?
Yeah, definitely. And the good thing is that they are kind of solving their own problems without having the waiting time for waiting for someone else to take decisions, for instance. So, and they are sitting close to the information. They can make the right decision as long as they understand what is the best for the organization. So that is what we need to train everyone in, understanding of what is the right decision in those different circumstances.
And in a good team like that, you could say that leadership is kind of distributed. So there's not like one leader. You have leadership as a phenomenon, you could say, that is distributed in the team. And someone might take leadership and saying, oh, let's go and talk with these users or understand this user here. Or someone might say, no, let's be aware of the quality or the design here. And someone might take business or marketing perspectives. But as we were talking about, it's about learning. It's about taking perspective, and it's about using the wisdom of the team to kind of harness that collective intelligence that exists there.
But then what happens with the traditional management? Because if this crowd, a small group that is sitting on the information, that has knowledge how to do things, that basically has everything they need, then what's the role of the management, where that stands?
I would say the role of the management is, first of all, making sure that everyone is aligned, working in the same direction and knowing what is most important. But the second thing is to have the holistic understanding, because we can't have people working on their own islands in silos. We need to have decisions taken on a holistic level. And I think that is a huge challenge, to make people understand really the full picture.
So the alignment here, I guess, is the key word.
Sorry, the alignment, yes. Alignment is very important, but also collaboration.
Mhm.
Especially when companies grow a little bit bigger. It's not enough that we have alignment, because if we're not collaborating, we're not making use of each other.
Yeah, there's this pitfall with the word alignment, because I can kind of force you to do what I say, and now you're aligned.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah, so that's not what you mean. It's creating kind of, so it's coherent, that it's that all pieces are fitting together, and that we are creating something that is bigger than we each of us can create.
Is it like understanding the problem and knowing why? Like, for example, if we take an example of Spotify, we say that, okay, now we have a problem with streaming. We can't serve our music to our users there and there, and that's the problem. And why? Well, because that's our core business. We have to make sure that we are delivering the best service to our customers. So kind of go and try to find a solution for this, because now you know what and why. Is that kind of the perspective that managers should do? Or
Yeah, I would take it even further, because if you're looking at the team, the advantage of the team is that each individual are helping each other. So they have their expertise, and put together, they are much smarter than each individual. And if you just grow that another part, then you can say that each team have their skills. But it's when the teams get together and the different skills get together, that's when really the magic is happening. And this is for management to take advantage of. And to be really honest, I'm not really seeing this in so many companies.
that's valid, I guess, for big problems, because when you're combining several teams, that means that the challenge is significant. So you have to have multidiscipline, teams working together on this problem.
Yeah.
But I think what to kind of pointing to it, is it's so common that managers come with kind of predefined solutions or kind of requirements that are disguised as solutions. We need to have this kind of feature, or we need to have this thing on the market. And those are kind of solutions. And sometimes they're disguised as a requirement. Oh, we have this requirement to do this feature. So I think what you're pointing to there is kind of looking at what are the key problems that we need to solve, and why. So I think prioritizing and kind of defining the key problems, I think that is a good part of management.
And I would add to that the really cool thing is that most people get very energized by solving problems, not just implementing the solution. So first of all, you get a much better solution because more people have been exposed for the problem. But secondly, you get better engagement. So it's actually a really good win-win there.
Indeed, people could add a bit more of their personalities, but exploring the problem kind of domain.
Yeah.
They could talk to users. They could that's personal interactions. And again, we're social beings. It's fun for us to socialize, for some of us.
Yeah. And I think from if you have more a formal manager, the idea is that kind of to look more on a little longer time horizon, and maybe taking bigger perspective, seeing wider, and maybe also kind of on a little higher abstraction level. So not micromanaging, being into the operations or details, or kind of giving solutions for, but just kind of having this broader perspective, seeing further, seeing broader, seeing longer. That's a bit, I think, the role of manager.
Indeed.
Or senior managers.
And that's quite tough. But then it doesn't leave much space in between, because here you have, if we're looking at the classical pyramid, right, you have the people who are a lot of them, and they work with customers, they care for the products. It's a lot of them. And then you have these people who define the problems at the top level, and they would bring those problems down and say, this is what we have, and that's why, try to solve it. Do we have, like, sometimes the pyramids are quite tall.
Yeah. Yeah, so for, I think, middle managers, that's the question, if you need that. Often you hear that, oh, now the manager should be a coach instead. but I think that is a bit too easy answer. Yeah, in some cases, middle managers could become good coaches, but I think that's like a profession in itself. So yes, for sure, that could be one possibility. But here again, it's very context specific. So in your context, if you've been a manager in your context, you have a lot of knowledge that's really valuable. So you might add those with some, you might become an expert again, or working, delivering kind of hands-on value. But also you might have knowledge about the business, so you could be working with that. Also many employees look to the manager as kind of provide them with all their needs. Like, you think that the manager should be kind of a coach, support, trainer. Yeah, I think you can probably do one or two of those, but you cannot provide all the needs for all your employees. So becoming more of like a broker or a networker. So, oh, you need some development in this area, go and talk to those people. Or, you have that problem, I can connect you with that person over there. Or you might need that training. So having that kind of servant or support function, I think it's really important. But I think it's a bit too complex to say that now middle managers will be doing this and this one thing. It depends on the person and the context.
I like to turn things around and just consider, if you are a team working close to the company, to the customer, and what help do you need? That is more interesting. And the obvious answers are, of course, direction, like where are we going? What kind of customers are we working with? What is our unique selling point, and so on? Are we the cheap company? Are we the high quality company? Or are we the quick company, or whatever? So that is part of importance, and you need someone who can help you with that. You need, of course, you need competence. So maybe you need training. You need to have a good environment, both a physical environment, but also usually most people have today also a digital environment. So you kind of need that. So the remaining question is, what more do you need? And if you have a need, then who can help you solve that? And maybe we should not talk about mid managers, and because that is just talking about the hierarchy, and that came because we wanted to send all the questions up and get an answer back down. And the bigger the company become, then it was too hard to sit in the top and answer all the questions. You had to have middle managers who could answer some of the questions for you, so you could focus on the more important and stuff. But now, if the teams are making their own decisions,
everybody have access to the same information, so it doesn't make sense to go to the manager to ask for the information.
This is the thing.
But this turning it around, that's a great exercise I've done many times. So if you have a leadership team or a team, and I given them taking some monopoly money from my kids from the game, and then with some leadership team. So imagine now you're a micro enterprise or your startup. You can keep all the revenue, and you your net income is like 1 million. This this monopoly money for like a month. That's your kind of current run rate. So at the moment, if you want to expand, do you want to outsource anything, or what kind of support do you need or want? And it's very different. Some say no, I think we want to have salary paid up by the end of the month. We should have some kind of fitness or health kind of benefits, but nothing else. And then you do it with some others, and they just kind of are stuck in the traditional way of thinking. So they say, maybe we should have a marketing division. Maybe we should have a HR division. And so they build the hierarchy, but it's but typically, if you really ask, so if it was your company, your startup, what would be the things that you would like to buy or kind of outsource or get support with to make you more effective? And then you can create kind of the service that you need for those.
Oh, I wish I would have that money when I had my own company.
It's a very interesting exercise. I mean, what would you spend your money on if the team can make their own decisions? Maybe you save a lot of money then.
That's the thing. I mean, I think knowledge gives you power in the modern organizations.
Yeah.
And when we say that we want teams to take decisions, that means effectively we have to connect people from the teams to the sources of information, removing the middleman. And that's the only way how I see you can actually get there, where the teams would be empowered to make the same decisions. Otherwise, they will also need to come back and talk to someone and ask for all this context. We're getting back to the context.
Yeah.
And they will ask the context because they don't know it. They're not connected to these information sources, and they will just go back and forth, and that creates delays, that creates frustrations, waiting time. How to do that?
Well, I mean, we work a lot with agile teams, and all good agile teams, they kind of have access to the user. So they actually meet or talk to users very frequently and have data as well.
It's quite cool that you mentioned the data. My good friend, guess we're in Spotify. I've asked him, like, so how often do you meet your users? And he told me, well, never. I'm like, how is that possible? No, but he told me we basically have all information we need by looking at the user profiles and statistics that we collect, and that's another excellent way to have data-driven decisions. Right? You can test your assumptions as well if you have invested enough in collecting data about your potential customers. Now, anonymous, of course.
Yeah.
But I still think you should also, even though independent how much data you have, you don't know what people think unless you can talk with them. So you should also talk with them. But I know that some gaming companies or companies that have access to so much data, they tend to kind of not talk with users. But they should do that as well, I think.
They are, in a sense, they're also users of their own product. So
that's very true. And I guess if you are working at Spotify and you are at a party, people will tell you.
Indeed. I was actually complaining to him. I was trying to switch my country from Denmark to Sweden, and that's a pain.
Can imagine. I think also when talking about the data and providing people or connecting team with data, I think also a very important mindset here is if we feel that a team has made the wrong decision, we should consider what made them, what kind of information do they have, and what kind of information are they lacking because they made that wrong decision. So instead of blaming, saying, you are stupid, you can't make decisions, I take over, told you so, and things, rather consider, okay, what kind of information should you have had access to be able to make the right decision instead?
Well, that's a classical pattern you just described. I mean,
but in this more complex environment that we talked about, I think it's key that everyone in the organization is kind of sensing and taking in data. So it becomes like more of a neural network with sensory sensors going out and taking things in. So if there start to be complaints in the organization, then they can pick it up, or if there's a new trend on the market or things like this. Because if you don't have that information flowing in the organization, by the time in a traditional organization, by the time it's kind of been escalated and risen to the top, so to say, it also have been abstracted away kind of from the reality. It takes too long, and you have missed the opportunity for investing in something, or maybe you realize that there's a lot of complaints in one department. And also, if you have in a traditional organization, it's not really resilient, because one poor manager in one part of the organization can make that kind of part not work, right? And if you don't kind of sense that very early, you can have a big problem before you notice it.
So is it legwork the answer to this as well, and data collection, I guess? about
Yes.
your own company or
And
organization.
having the kind of channel so that people can sense and act on information.
Workshops, or it could be those hack days. There's a lot of tools to figure out and figure out new trends. I think this is a very interesting topic. I mean, everyone is influenced by the people around them and their environment. So if you want to be being at the right time with the right product, you have to be listening to all this. And someone is sensing something at a party, or hearing from their kids at school or something, and just come up with, this is what we should do. And it's so important to make this information easy to reach the whole company and make the right decisions.
Indeed, and you mentioned hackathons.
Yeah.
I haven't actually thought about that, but obviously that's what we were doing. And if I look back, it's like it's a perfect way for the organization to, of course, feel the new trends and try them out, but also a good way for the organization to heal itself, in a sense that if you have a pain point within the organization, then people on those hackathons will come up with ideas how to address that, like internal tools, internal processes. And I have seen a lot of that. Leaders and followers, I think it's another interesting topic that we could touch kind of.
And this is going back to traditional way of thinking, that we should have leaders, and good leaders are collecting a lot of followers. That the definition of a good leader is that they have a lot of followers, but maybe we should rethink that and think of a good leader as someone who's creating a lot of other good leaders. So it's not about the followers they are creating, it's more about the leaders they are creating.
In one of the good books I read that it's not that bad to be a follower actually. It's bad if you're following without sharing the ideas of who you're following. But if you're following someone who you believe, then you yourself become a leader, but in a smaller kind of scale. Because people around you, you would share the same. If you're a passionate person, you would share the same person. To me, it's a story about the travel agent. That's what I always think. Like, if you're the travel agent, and the customer would come to you, and if you're selling like tours to Egypt, if you've never been to Egypt, you will tell about that with one level of energy. But if you've been there, if you have seen the pyramids yourself, imagine what would be that level of emotions that you would express to a customer. Totally different worlds, totally different levels. And that's the same with being a follower who believes in what he follows, and a follower who just follows because he needs to perform his work duty.
I think there's this idea of the kind of first follower is maybe the most important leader. That there might be one kind of lone person with an ID, but the kind of first follower is the one that might kind of make the crowd or make it visible and have it kind of catch on. But a good leader, and we'll come back to this with followers. So a good leader is also a good follower.
Because
so
he's
they
humble
know,
to learn.
when to lead and when to follow others. So I think this comes back to we talked about leadership rather than only leader. So leader is not only in the role of kind of formal positions, but leadership kind of is a more distributed function.
And I think also interesting to mention is, or talk about, is this idea of the normal classical organization, that the top gets smaller and smaller. So you have kind of a zero game. I think that's right. Where that means the only way for someone to get up is that you get down.
To kick someone out.
Yeah, exactly. So what are the incentives for you to actually train someone to become a really good leader? The only reason is when you feel that, I'm old enough, I want to resign and I want someone to take over after me. Else, you prefer to kind of keep them down so they are not challenging you in your position.
What level do you think that is valid for? Because that's a damn good point. A damn good point. Because the higher you go, the more you will lose, and the more probably unsafe you will feel about those people who surround you and who are good.
Mm.
There is this kind of famous book called The Peter Principle. And the concept is that you're promoted until the level of your incompetence. So eventually you are put in a position where it's too much complexity or too difficult, and you're kind of struggling in that role. So you're not promoted anymore. But then typically it's too much prestige to go back or kind of down your organization. So that's when you get assigned special projects or something like that.
I was recently watching this this dude from Joe Rogan's podcast. His name was Avi Loeb, like an Israeli-American astrophysicist, I think he is. And he was like in charge of the astrophysics, I believe. I might be wrong. In Cambridge, in one of the great universities. And he talks about this solar object, which was discovered in 2020, Oumuamua or something like that. It's like the object we have never seen in space before. It has very unique features. It reflects, it kind of rotates, and it reflects light with very different intensity. So it's like, it's very thin. It doesn't have the tail like the comet would have. It went into the solar system from the outside of the solar system without the tail, which is strange. It made a push from the sun without losing its mass. Very weird behavior. And this guy says, well, let's explore it. Let's talk about this. We have never seen such a thing before. Maybe it's like something new, because we're observing the solar skies for 200 years or something only. We're new into this, but we have never seen this before. And this looks like something that which might be made by someone. Let's take a look at it. And what he not complains, but he actually brags about it, that his colleagues, they told him like, oh, we wish this would never appear, because they didn't want to talk about that. And he's like, what the hell are you doing, guys? You're a scientist. You're there to explore and describe the nature. And what happens, as he explains, it's that at a certain level, when you become like a PhD, you gain your reputation, you get your name. And on that level, your ego again speaks for you. And if you would talk about the subject where you can make a mistake, you will lose that reputation. So you'll prefer to stay in the safe grounds than to explore something new, which is kind of the essence of your work, the essence of your like initial call. So you would deviate from your like nature by getting high in the hierarchy. And this is very good. I think I would actually like to write a small essay on that when it comes to the IT world and IT environment, because I think that also happens a lot. People prefer to stay away from something rather than explore it and make a mistake, because in many environments, mistakes are painful.
That is also something about the complex environment, that since experiments is a way of accelerating learning, if we are experimenting, we are failing. You can't be experimenting without failing sometimes. And in the complex world, it's actually good because you learn from it. It's like having a hypothesis. It's very good to be wrong in it because you learn from that as well. And I think it's very much true, as you're saying, in a hierarchical zero-sum game world, it's extremely dangerous to fail. Your failure will be more obvious than when you're doing something right. And then we will have a company that is just trying to survive by not failing. And in the complex world, we need to do the other thing, that is failing, learning, and doing the right thing, and doing this over and over and over again.
And I'm always saying to my teammates that it's appreciated if you fail. You shouldn't be scared of that, because that means that you've been courageous enough that you stepped out and you knew that you might fail, and you did with the best, you acted with the best of your knowledge, with the best of the organizational knowledge, and you still didn't succeed. It hurts like hell, probably, So someone should actually cheer that person up, because he's in a terrible position or conditions right now. He's scared, he's puzzled what's going to happen with me, and
Yeah, I think it's kind of popular lately to say that, oh, we should fail or we should take risk. But then when something happens, it's not expected. And then it has been kind of, bad experimentation, because if you know the outcome of the experiment is not, as Thomas said, it's not an experiment. So the best learning comes from when the outcome is very uncertain. Right? So it's just 50-50 if it will work or not. But if we just expect kind of successful experiments, then we have defeated the purpose. Is not really any experimentation or learning.
how should organizations act to kind of grow this proper mindset? Because I think it's an effort. We are not primed for that. We have to take active steps to be in the position where we appreciate experiments. And experiments is also, when you failed, it means you've wasted something, right? You've wasted time and money. You've learned a lot, but many organizations do not see that as something appreciative.
I think one good example that's kind of recent is Microsoft, because they were going down for some years ago, but I really like the CEO that they have now, Satya Nadella. He really focusing on learning. I think he read this famous book, Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck, and realized that he needed to implement that throughout Microsoft. So he has kind of changed the culture. So he says that as a CEO, you have to stop being a know-it-all and be a learn-it-all. So if you think you know, you're going to fail. When it's complex, the learning is the key. So creating that kind of culture. So he has some software background, I think. So he has kind of created that culture in Microsoft lately, and I think that is one part of the Microsoft have come back as a much more successful company last couple of years.
Yeah. This is also showing something very important, this story, because it's important not to just talk about the direction when it comes to what we do. It's also about pointing the direction in the culture we have and the processes and the abilities we want to have in our company. So what he was doing there was to show that it's important to experiment and learn, and failing is part of that. And I think that's the right way to do it, to celebrate failing as a way of learning, but also pointing out how much the upside would have been if the experiment would have been showing better result. But understanding that we can't really be among the best unless we are also failing.
I kind of like the coach's mantra. There are no failures, just learnings or learning opportunities.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's it's called General Directive for Perspectives, I think. Like a statement, a paragraph. I don't remember exactly how it sounds,
yes.
But it's like
The prime directive. Yeah.
The prime directive, indeed. So we believe that everyone was acting with the best of its knowledge in the given circumstances, and we believe that everyone have done their best. So we appreciate that. I think that's the super approach. That's what we should have more in the organizations.
Yes, that's a way to kind of create a safe environment, because everybody wants to, or almost everyone wants to kind of do a really good job and do their best at every moment that they can. So if you can acknowledge that it's one way to maybe talk about sensitive things and bring out learnings, and it's very vulnerable to share when things haven't gone so well. So creating that kind of psychological safety is a key for learning and learning environment.
I mean, there's a very simple mechanism why that is painful, because even if you talk about safety, even if you create this environment and you kind of show your own vulnerability as a manager, as a leader, you share something where you have failed, and your teammates see that, but you have to act accordingly. Like, if someone has this failure, and in 5-6 months on the performance appraisal or salary review, you will have a dialogue, and you will be told, yeah, you failed there and here. I mean, would you be ever encouraged to share something that you've done in the wrong way where you failed? Never. It's just one time you've done that in that organization with those people, and if you've been kind of punished for that, you'll never do it again.
You try to hide it instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, I think one book I like is Everyone Culture by Robert Keegan, and he talks about, I think they estimate that people kind of waste 25% of their energy at work, kind of trying to look good or trying to be professional, kind of playing this professional game that, oh, can I say this? If I say that, what will people think of me? Maybe I have to say the right thing, or do I dare to bring that up? And yeah, of course, you might not be reflecting that consciously about it, but basically you're wasting 20 or 25% of your energy at work every day, unless you have that kind of open, safe space.
depends also on the company. In the banks, I guess that number goes way up.
Yeah.
And it's not just about losing energy. It's also that you are losing other perspectives.
Yeah. You get, I mean, the quality of the data and the decision, it will be so much lower.
But how can one, become a better leader? How can you become your own? How can you develop in here? How can you become a leader rather than a manager? What should you do? If you could self-manage this process, or
I think the first step is to change the mindset. Having the idea of the importance of learning, I would say this is the starting. So starting with the growth mindset.
be humble to learn.
Yes, be humble. Be humble to everything, I would say. but interested in learning, and not having the idea of, oh, I'm the expert. Someone gave me this position, so that means that I'm the expert. Getting rid of that. Secondly, consider what is the importance. What is it actually I can do for the company here? Knowing that I am just one person, but I might be the manager for maybe 20 people. So is it making me look good that is most important, or is it making them act good or being good? So I think that's the second part.
Yeah, so I read this, that about changing habits or kind of learning new things, there is kind of these three ways. Like either is you get a shock or epiphany, like you almost run over when you're crossing the street and you say, oh, maybe I should be more careful. So we don't recommend that. Secondly, I mean, the environment. If you look to leaders who inspire you, or that they have some skills or trait that that you admire in them, if you admire it in someone else, it resonates with you, and you admire it because you don't really do that yet. Or it might be that if you wouldn't admire it, you wouldn't see it or recognize it, what they're doing. So it's kind of in your reach. So reflect of kind of some role models, what you admire in them, and the best is start hanging around, like changing your environment. So if you don't have the shock, change your environment. And then the third one is kind of practice in small daily, small steps. So break it down. So if you see someone that is really good in coaching, for example, or listening, so start being reflective or being aware of when do you listen, how well do you listen in different circumstances. And when you start getting a hang of that, try to see, okay, that person that really listens very well, see if I can emulate or practice those skills. So you kind of build in some daily reflection and daily, very, very small kind of daily steps. Then it's very safe. And that's how children learn. Like you try something, you want to stand up, you follow again. It's not a failure. It's just you try and then you follow to the other side. So, I fell on this side. So it kind of this constant. But when we grew up, we think you need to have this kind of course, and you should do exactly right. And you see if it's a failure if you don't get it the first time, and then we give up. So yeah, the recommendation is kind of look up to people with skills that you admire and hang around with them, and then also try to be more reflective and emulate them.
Watch the podcasts with them and YouTube videos with them.
No.
No, but actually, I mean, everything you can use. I mean, it could be books, it could be videos, it could be podcasts or whatever. I mean, influences, getting that from somewhere so you can understand that, oh, this is something I admire. I want to learn more about it, and then deepen your knowledge in it. I think that is a really good idea. And reflections, I really like that word.
Yeah, reflection is really if you can, for learning you need feedback loops, and reflecting is kind of looking at your own thoughts, so you kind of start to see them, but it's even more powerful if you can reflect with someone else or get their perspective, so creating that feedback loop. So start practicing also kind of seeking and taking perspectives. That is a very common pitfall for managers, that you don't really search and kind of take others' perspective. It doesn't mean you have to change your own perspective, but things are so complex that you need multiple perspectives on things.
This thing about feedbacks, I think it's a great topic, because the feedback is the way for you or for someone to learn, because that's how you see how what you do reflects on the environment that you're in.
Yeah.
But something about feedback. Feedback should be your tool for learning for yourself. It should not be your tool for changing others.
Oh, indeed.
It's
That's a
absolutely worthless as a tool for changing others. So when we talk about feedback culture, it should be like, I want to have feedback. I don't want to give feedback. It's giving feedback to someone who is not asking for it is,
Manipulation.
in best case, worthless.
Or worse, manipulation.
Yeah.
I think I know what's best for you, so I'll give you some feedback, Thomas.
Yeah, exactly.
This should be in gold letters, in bold. I can't do this
Yeah.
on this podcast, but guys, this is so important.
And I must say, the format does not matter. It has nothing to do with it.
Indeed. This is so true.
I think there is one, because now we talked about individual development, which is really important. So, and being on a kind of a journey, so that also you put yourself out a little, try new things, share when you don't know, being a role model in that. But another thing I think is using the team again. And if you're a leader, kind of using the skill of your team and developing the team, because individual growth is very good, but it's a bit slow. And we have problems today that we need to solve kind of here and now, right? And we need to use the people that we have. So focusing on kind of getting out the maximum of your team, so that you can kind of leverage all the perspectives and intelligence that you have. I think that is kind of how to accelerate leadership.
Instead of everyone becoming really good at everything, it's a good shortcut to just make use of the team instead.
Yeah, it shortens the time where you could utilize the knowledge of the group, because everyone will have strengths in different kind of directions.
Yeah, I typically like to give kind of the analogy with like Marvel heroes. So if you are into this kind of movies, there are all these heroes with different kind of strength, but they also have, each hero have a flaw, right? And that's how we are as people. We have strength and we have some flaws, and then if we can leverage those strengths, they are like spikes, so we can have like a spiky leadership team. So imagine getting the Marvel heroes together, and we just make sure that we don't have kind of destructive or negative, really bad behavior, but we all have flaws. So instead, leveraging those skills in the team. And most management teams are not really teams, they are more of leadership groups, where you are there representing kind of your department or your perspective, which is better than not kind of coming together, but it's not really building on top of each other, being innovative, creative, and really taking these perspectives together and leveraging them.
Yeah, I would say most leadership teams I've seen, they are more fighting of being the next in line when the CEO is resigning. So not really collaborating, more fighting about resources, and so yeah.
Or they might go to like this more transactional deal, like, okay, I lend you a couple of resources. I know you will lend me some when I have a problem later then.
Hopefully. We have an agreement.
Yeah.
In all this, like we've discussed a lot today, the growth, the development of group and individual person, and in all this, we've mentioned several times that the person should be humble, should be open to learn, should really see the best in the others surrounding him. To me, this is a bit like the behavior that kids very often have. This ability to learn and being opened, at the same time being adult to sort of take responsibility for what you do. I think this is also something very important because very often we are on one side or on another side. It's more like, how do we develop adults then? We are also in the environments where we have to develop. We started as kids and we have to grow.
A lot is getting back to kind of I mean, you assume that before then, when you were 18 or 21, like now you're an adult, you don't need to grow or learn anything more, but that time is,
I don't think so.
yeah, first of all, everything is changing, you have to learn, and secondly, brain science kind of supports it because the brain is neuroplastic, it evolves, so you don't stop learning actually. So that's good for us that are a little older. But we have kind of forgotten a bit how to learn, so it's getting back to those we learn as kids, like trying, just not seeing it as failure, but it's kind of innate urge to kind of learn and try new things. And what I mentioned with kind of small daily practice is you actually get some endorphins or this dopamine cycle going. It's enjoyable to learn, but often we kind of set this big goal that, oh, we should be able to do this, and then you try it once and you fail, and you're discouraged. So, but if you're in this kind of small, think big, but take super small steps, just try everything, practice something every day, and I think you will come into kind of a positive cycle. It's like when you start out running or being outdoors or taking walks, it's a bit take some energy in the beginning, but as after a while you create more energy than you spend, and you kind of enjoy it, and that kind of you're pulled in that direction. So coming back to learning as kids, being curious, trying new things, just taking small steps, and not kind of having to look good or playing this role that have to do it right from the beginning.
I think that is the hardest part. Failing hurts more when you get older in some way. And it, both from learning like mental skills, but physical skills as well. Going skiing. If I was younger, I would like to learn some new way of skiing, like snowboard and stuff. And I tried that when I was younger, but now I don't dare.
Because you might fall.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a stupid feeling. And I try to tell myself that I need to learn to fail more, to be more willing to fail. And it's hard. Even though I'm standing here preaching that idea, it's hard for myself as well.
I don't know, maybe it's about me, but when I've learned skiing first, I haven't had an instructor or anything. And I think when I did that, YouTube wasn't even there or something. It was a long time ago. So I remember me going in the winter on the lake. I would put my skis on, and the first thing I would do, I would just fall down right away. Just myself, like, boom, on my butt. just to feel it, and then realize that it doesn't hurt. And I could stand up. And then I would start skiing, and I would fall a lot, and not in this position, but on the back, on the front, on the side, and that would actually hurt. But then somehow the entry barrier for me to start this wasn't that big. And I can't say that, I became great at that, but at least I learned it.
What gets in the way is that we focus too much on the performance. So if you think that you have to kind of ski down the whole slope without falling to perform, but then that gets in the way of learning and actually gets in the way of the performance in the long run.
Maybe it's about defining success.
Yes, it's more about the rate of learning is the key to success. So if you learn, the faster you learn, the more successful you'll be. Yeah, so I suppose it goes back to Satya Nadella then. Stop being a know-it-all, be a learn-it-all. And if he can learn, if he doesn't know and he's the CEO of Microsoft, I think we can all kind of be a bit more humble and just learn.
What's the name of the guy who's the captain of the submarine?
David Marque.
It's the same story, right?
If you haven't read his book, Turn the Ship Around, I highly recommend it. It's really inspiring.
It's quite interesting, because the inspiring part of it for me is that, I mean, it's a damn submarine, right? If you fail, you would think, okay, that's really big. That's a disaster. You might die by doing something wrong. But then he had enough trust in people that he would think that, they know what to do. And the failure wouldn't be that big, that they would all sink down. And if you transfer that to the organizational level, very often people restrict these experimentations. They think the failure is too painful. But I mean, compared to the submarine failure,
I think the importance here is to see the difference between when it's just exercising, which was actually most of the time they were spending was exercising, and taking that time and be doing the failures when it's safe to fail, and which make the whole organization to learn something which they can make use of when it's actually in a critical situation. I think a lot of organizations, that they are acting like it's always a critical situation. So they're not accepting failure. And then when it's really a critical situation, they have not learned how to handle that. So then that's when they really are failing. So I think it's actually good for organizations, even though you're not in a submarine. But having this idea of we are training, we are learning, and when really the shit hits the fan, then we are ready for it.
I know you've been working with David Marque. Did you come up with some maybe interesting exercises you could recommend for people to try, for organizations to try out, or maybe some advices on how they should change their mindset, to stop acting as if they're always in a critical situation?
I think so. He has a lot of very good ideas that he's presenting in his books. He has 2 books now. And I think one of them is like, don't be good, get better. I think that is very important. When someone is saying, well, I think we are good, I say, I don't care. I don't know what good is. I mean, do you have a scale on that or what? Maybe you're good, I don't know. But the importance is, what have you done to become a little bit better? Like better since last week, since last month? What have you done? What are the differences? How do you know that you actually have been better? I think this is the more important questions to ask, and not rating people in some very strange scale, saying you are good and you are almost good. I don't know.
That's what happens, right? That's when you get the performance appraisals. You get the scales. Have you been performing well, good, or excellent, or something like that?
What is the scale? How do you know that
the trend is better, more important? As we said, how fast you learn is the key to success.
Yeah.
But one small simple exercise that we got to do when we trained with him was, and he said that you don't realize how much kind of need for control you have in you. And it's good to practice letting go of control. So what you'll do is that for a week or 10 days, when you go to lunch or dinner to restaurants, you don't order yourself. You ask the waiter to order for you. And then, so when they say what you want, to say, you decide, and don't play it safe.
I do it very often. I haven't
You do that?
spoken to David Marque, no.
Ah,
Yes,
you do that?
I do that. I do that.
You're a natural.
I mean, I just read somewhere that, usually, I mean, it's natural that these guys know what is the best thing they can offer. They
Yeah.
spoke to the chef. They know what the kitchen looks like. It's logical to ask them, what do you think I should order today?
Yeah.
And I kind of always get really good suggestions.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Then you don't have a control issue.
Maybe in some other aspects.
But it's a fun small exercise, and I tried it. And my colleague kind of was a bit stressed that I was because sometimes they don't dare to give you advice. So they say, no, what you like. No, just tell me that. No, what you like. No, tell me. Then she had to excuse me, saying that, well, don't bother. Just give him something, because he's gone to this course and now it's he's just doing an exercise. Just give him anything. But that's a small kind of do something that is a bit uncomfortable. Small things that kind of safe to fail, and then be in that space.
Another good thing he's talking about, I think, is this idea of stress, because I know a lot of leaders that think that if we don't have, if you're not putting out the deadline or something, you will not get anything done. That's a quite common idea, and in some way it's true, but I think there are better ways than creating the stress that a lot of organizations are having. And the reason for that is that when you're in stress, you don't really have this holistic view of things. So you might be doing the wrong things. You might be working very well with something because you're very focused, but maybe you're doing that on the wrong thing, and you're taking decisions based on the wrong information. You don't have the full picture again. So.
And typically you don't learn. If you think about the time when you learned, you typically are in a more kind of relaxed or positive state than being stressed. It's really difficult to learn if you're in a stress mode.
It's probably impossible to do that. I mean, if you look at how kids learn, it would be very hard to see them learning when they don't like something.
Yeah.
There has been research, and again, I don't have any proof link for that, but I think what I read is like when you are playing, you're learning like 6 or like times more efficient if you would do that just by not playing. Like, if you're having fun, if you're doing it in a gaming kind of way, then you have a higher rate of absorption of information, a higher rate of keeping it in mind.
And talking about kids, I mean, why do kids learn to walk? Just because they see other people's walking. So it shows the importance of being the leader you want to have others to be.
Damn it, that's true, because they look at the others.
Yeah.
Because there were examples of kids raised by animals.
I don't think they walk, right? If they have been raised by wolves or something like that, I don't think they walk on 2 legs at least.
No, they would repeat what their parents, so to say, would do.
But imagine that you were going to learn to walk as an adult. You probably sign up for the walking class. You take 3 classes, and you give yourself kind of 3 opportunities. And if you failed, you would probably give up walking. I never be a walker. It's not for me. It was too difficult.
Only idiots are walking.
Yeah.
On one of the martial arts classes I'd been taking, there was the instructor in the first classes. He was actually teaching the class how to walk more efficient. He was giving examples how, like, people could walk like the whole day without getting tired, and that has to do a lot with the center of gravity and how you put it and how to distribute it. And on the next class, he would teach you how to fall, so you don't get scared when you continue the classes. And many people would actually fail on that, but then because he would do it very slowly, they would get this feeling, that the sense of safety that they could continue with it. Very interesting.
I remember me and I have two sons, and we like to go scuba diving. And when we took the certification, my younger son, I think when he became 11, he was 11 and my older son like 14 or something. So we took the certification, and then I had to call the kind of diving shop there. Is it really from 11? Can you be that young to take a scuba certification? And he says, the children are no problem at all. They just copy and do. The adults. So then I said, oh yeah, I know. Okay, I'll sign up. So an 11-year-old can learn to scuba dive with no problem, but adults are really challenged or struggling.
It's the same with the language. At the language school, I've been learning Danish actually, and I had a friend of mine who was Indian guy, and we had the group as well. And it was quite interesting that at some point people had problems with the Danish language. Like it's a funny language.
Yeah.
I really like it though. But then people were like having problems with like saying words which would sound very unnatural to their native language, like "flö." What the hell is that? And my friend noticed it was very easy for him, and I asked him, like, so how come that you kind of so fluent with these sounds? And he said, I speak 7 languages, like Indian languages, and they're quite different from each other. And in those languages, we probably have all possible sounds on earth. So none of this for me is new. And for the other people, it was just in their minds to realize that they have all the muscles, they have everything. The hardware is there. It's the brain that they're missing to let it sound unnatural. And that's a lot about adults. When things are not natural to us, we struggle.
Yeah, we think we can. Yeah, we think we cannot, or we set limits on ourselves.
Yeah, I think that is the biggest problem. Maybe it's harder, especially when it comes to muscle memory. But I mean, we need to keep trying. I think that's important. I decided, like, actually, I know it was 286 days ago. I started to learn Spanish. Corona hit us, needed something to do, and I saw some commercial about this app that is helping you to learn a new language, and I was thinking, why not? I can learn Spanish. So now I have a streak of 286 days.
Wow,
So,
which app is that? Would you recommend it?
Duolingo.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I think it's great. I saw some statistics just a couple of weeks ago. It was presented that I've learned more than 1,000 words, and it was like, wow, this is cool. But I think I need 1 more year before I can go to Spain and understand anything. But it's kind of cool to learn, I think.
Yeah.
I have a project with Spanish guys starting this week. If I would, start it when you did, then it would be great.
Yeah.
I'd ask you guys something else, or one topic as well. In this discussion that we had with you, what do you think is the role of HR?
I think Michael have the answer to
Yeah.
this.
So again, coming back to that, first of all, the servant leadership part. So I think traditionally HR is kind of executing on the executive team, like, oh, this is what we should have, and then they're kind of implementing, serving kind of the executive team, or coming up with kind of processes themselves, rather than thinking of kind of shifting it, seeing the people on the front line and managers as their customers, and kind of really doing some user research. What's the need? What do they really want to have support with? And then designing kind of the support from there. So it's quite a big shift in mindset there, to kind of focus on the employees and see how they need to be served.
Do you maybe give an example of that? Or some story.
Typically, you have a lot of HR processes that this is the yearly salary review, the yearly performance management. This kind of they go like on a clock, independently if they're needed or not, or the kind of new tools and things to be rolled out. But if you instead had the dialogue to see, okay, what do we need here? How can I support you? They are key, I think. They know a lot about leadership, psychology, and organizational development and things like that. So they could be supportive, serve in that area.
I think this is important for all supporting parts of the organization to understand that they are supporting the work. I mean, legal, finance, etc. But not too seldom you see that they are more controlling. They are telling you what you are allowed to do, like security saying, no, you can't do that. You can't use that tool. You can't do it this way, etc., etc. Instead of asking themselves, why are we here? Is it to control people or to help them do the right thing? And I think that is true for everyone that is a servant in the organization. That means everyone that is not actually doing the work that the customers are paying for.
So I think there's been a shift, like in the last 2 years, a big shift, because before that, when I was talking with some from HR, they were really interested in like agile and leadership. They said, "Oh, that's interesting. Are you doing that? Oh, great, fantastic. But wait, are you doing that? That's our job to work with culture and team and leadership. But tell me more." And then they were kind of flipping back and forth. So they were kind of enthusiastic, but then they were, "Oh no, you cannot do that. That's our job. But tell me more." But the last like 2 years, I think they have kind of flipped over to say, "Oh, okay, so we are actually good at kind of leadership, collaboration, teamwork, and organizational design, and we can help in that." And if, for example, organization want to become more agile, so how can we shift all the like management processes, HR processes, to be designed from more an agile or serve more in a complex environment?
And what happens there? Because I mean, to me, if I might give an example, how I see that. So you have a management structure. You have maybe a manager which has maybe 2-3 teams, and then he suddenly has the need of hiring someone. So what he will do, he will follow the company process to do that, right? He will maybe use company template to make a job posting, run that through HR back and forth a couple of times, so it's all clear and then it complies to all the standards. He would maybe ask HR then to make this listing somewhere, and then he would wait, and then HRs would do the, I don't know, interviews and follow the rest of the process. And that would be probably the more traditional way. And what would be the more agile way then?
I had one organization I worked with was a company was growing quite quickly, and basically they said that you are responsible for your own recruiting. If there's a lack in one department, you need more people, you're responsible for that. And can I ask HR or what support do you need for that to happen? And they say that, okay, we want to use kind of networks and contacts, but it's not enough. We want to have like a stream of prospect or potential candidates, and please help us with that. And then they had one person from HR actually sitting together with them, helping with recruiting, but they were just kind of helping to provide a flow of possible candidates. That was their main role in recruiting, and also helping with setting up some events. Like it's not enough just to kind of do traditional job postings, but building up the brand recognition, brand value among, for example, students and so on. So they organized meetups and fairs and things like this.
What basically happened is, if I get it right, is that the HR agreed that they will not have this function centralized, but they will offer the opportunity for the unit that is in need to fulfill their need in their own way. again, probably do the interviews because they will have the best experts to do the interviews, and have HR as providing what they are missing, like, maybe psychological profile tests and things like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this, I guess, is valid for what I want to hear is agile purchasing soon.
Yes.
That would become a big deal because I think at the moment it's for large organizations, it's an area.
We have some colleagues that have created a website called the agilacontract.se. So that's kind of agile contracts. Yeah, so it's how to do procurement with using agile.
Wow.
And actually, they have a couple of public authorities that have actually gone through it. So it also works with the law. What's it called? The lagen.
The law about official purchasing, something like that.
Something like that. So it actually works also for kind of public domain, in the public domain.
Wow. I will definitely look into that because this might be something big.
Yeah,
shortening lead times.
Yeah, they have a lot of some business cases or example cases on the website there. I think the Danish Telestyrelsen, the Danish tele officials,
yes.
They were one of the first. Many years ago, they started with kind of this agile procurement, and they were so successful. They said that they never go back to kind of traditional procurement. But what you do is kind of you focus on the goal, what you want, the outcome. You focus on the parameters for collaboration or becoming more of a partner rather than a supplier and a buyer. So you see, you create a contract for being working as a partnership. So how will that look like? To make sure that you have the common goal, and then specify the collaboration rather than each deliverable.
That sounds excellent. I'm trying to create this sort of partnership with the purchasing department, with the company I kind of work with right now. Super interesting. I had one more question. And when you have actually the organization where you have these leaders instead of managers, where you have people who are servant leaders who help others people grow, how do you measure performance in these kind of organizations, both employees and these leaders?
I would say that you will probably continue measuring about the same things, like the things that are important for the company. The difference is that you are looking for a more longer horizon. If you just want to boost your figures for short term, I think that you will probably get problems in the long run. I mean, it's still interesting to see like how many new ideas is coming up. You see that errors are going down on the things that you are delivering. You see happiness going up. You see time to market is getting shorter and shorter, and you see what is produced getting higher and higher. So I still think it's the same measurement that are of interest, but I think it takes a little bit longer time. So maybe it's time to start thinking about those lead and lag measures, for instance, where lead measures are more the things you do, like how many new ideas are you coming up with that you think will help improve your performance. But then you have the lag measure where you can actually see that the performance are going up, but it could be half a year in between those two.
And I think having some kind of more simple measures on the organization itself. So one thing that we measure at Crisp is our happiness index. So measuring our engagement, that's basically our main measure, because if we are happy and engaged, then we will do a good job. So basically, and kind of watching the trend if it's going up or down. So I think that is one way to indirectly measure leadership. There are, of course, more direct measurements, assessments you can do on leadership, a bit more advanced tools but they're also mainly good for coaching and growth rather than kind of evaluation.
I also think there is another thing that is very important is that classically measurement has been for managers. So they are looking into the measures, they are making decisions based on that. But here we want the measurement to be for the team. So it's a team looking at the measurement and they are deciding, was this a good experiment or was it a bad experiment, and learning from that. And this could also be engaging them.
Yeah, it's learning and engagement through understanding of what you do and if you're moving in the right direction or not.
But then they must have the feeling of that they can do a difference. So they can make those decisions and make differences, or at least it's very easy to make it, or extremely quickly to make the decisions.
Typically, you want the metrics to be more of a kind of milestone on the way, so kind of more a tactical thing to check if we're going in the right direction or to learn from. You don't want to have a too narrow like metric as a goal, because you want to have more of a direction. It's when it's complex and goals are changing and so on. So you want to have a direction, but then you want to have feedback loops on the way. And then it's really good to state something that, oh, we're looking for this increase in this or increase in that. Because it increases learning. It's a bit like in sport. Someone told me that in Sweden, I don't know, some time ago, they told me that you stopped using kind of measuring goals when you play soccer, or measuring how high, because everybody should be so equal. But I'm not sure if it's true, but if you don't measure, you lose some learning, right? Imagine you're playing a game and then say, how is it going? I don't know. What's the score? I don't know. But if you can say, we're down 10-0. I wonder why. Maybe we should improve something. But it's not like, oh, we're so bad now, we're never going to play again. But you want to have it as basically for learning and navigating.
Yeah, it's very interesting when you have a simple measurement, how people get engaged, like playing football. If you score, you get 1 point. I mean, it's very simple to understand, and it makes people very engaged in the sport. The problem is when you take that away, what will happen then? And then you ask people, please continuously improve yourself, do something better. But you don't have the scoring system, so you don't know what better means. So the question is, what are you actually improving then? And I think most of the time the answer is your own comfort. And maybe that is what not for the good of the organization.
But still, you've mentioned two sets of kind of characteristics. One of them is, of course, the self-reflection. And when we talk about teams, it's like, one of them could be the health check. I'm using it a lot. I think really good tool. And another one is actual metrics on the product, because that should also change over time when you're having happy people that doing a really good job. I mean, that will be reflected in the products or services. So you should also look into that. And I really, think this is a good way to combine those measurement metrics.
Yeah, I think you can have many indicators, but use them for learning rather than as being the goal.
And especially not for evaluating from the outside, because as soon as you are making the measurement a tool for evaluation of how good you are, which means how much money you will get, I think then people will start gaming the system and the measurement, and then it will be more for short term than for long term. And I think the performance is for long term.
All right. So do you think we have that covered?
Hopefully.
I would love to have you guys back.
Yeah.
I think you're great. And, the experience and the practical examples are always, and thank you for sharing.
Thanks for having us on the podcast.
Yes, thank you. And I must say, it's impressive to see someone that is so eager to learn more.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for showing that.
Thank you, guys. It was really a pleasure to to talk to you, and I hope to see you back.
Yes.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Talk
Have
to
a
you
good one.
later.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.